Welcome into the Paul Farrington Show. A happy Father's Day to all the dads listening to the show today. Happy birthday to my mom. Her birthday was this past Sunday. Zach came over for some cake. Jack came over for some cake. Maybe got Jack sick. He's not with us today. Joined by Robert Ziggy Ziegler, as always, and producer Zach, the best executive producer in the game, is here today. And yeah, Jack allegedly has food poisoning. And it's interesting because none of us got it from the birthday cake that we had. It was a big debate, Ziggy. Huge debate in the house whether carrot cake or strawberry shortcake was better yesterday. So maybe it might have been unwise of me, but I went out and got 2 cakes for my mom's birthday. We have a ton of birthday cake left over in the fridge right now in the battle between carrot cake and strawberry shortcake. And it looked like most people, I think it won like 4-2 or something, strawberry shortcake over carrot cake. But allegedly, oh, go ahead.
Can I just ask a question, Paul?
Yeah, please.
Because you didn't really consult us on the opening much. Why are you opening with Happy Father's Day 2 days after Father's Day?
Well, I'm just
Happy Easter to everybody following the Paul Farrington
Come on,
Show.
it's
Happy
relevant.
Mother's Day to all the mothers out there.
Okay, so Ziggy wants to talk about the U.S. Open 2 days later. So it's wrong for me to talk about Father's Day, the exact same Sunday we're talking about here?
You said a Happy Father's Day. That implies it's Father's Day.
Okay, a happy belated Father's Day to any of the dads.
There you go.
Is that better? Is that acceptable? A happy belated birthday to my mother as well. So no Jack today, unfortunately. You know, Jack, we've been teasing him lately, went to his yearly doctor's appointment and came in 11 pounds heavier this year, which, you know, if you grow up knowing Jack and I are always super thin dudes. So Jack said his family's been telling him, like, hey, it looks like you're putting on some weight here. And he texts in our group chat, like, yeah, apparently I put on 11 pounds and should have seen him house and birthday cake. Maybe that actually got him under the weather. Producer Zach has sworn to get him back into shape, though, in Zach's garage gym. So a little bit of the blind leading the blind there, but I wouldn't doubt Zach too much.
Blind leading the blind? Can we throw producer Zach up here?
I'm just kidding.
Blind leading the blind. Yeah, look at that.
No, Zach actually, of anyone I know, Zach is probably up there for, you know, if you were to pit my friends against each other or our friend Ziggy, like producer Zach is a jiu-jitsu master, would be tough to take on. So yeah, Jack's going to owe a lot of thanks to Zach by the end of this summer. We'll do the shirtless episode and we'll see how it looks. But today should be a lot of fun. Today should be a really fun show. We're going to do the NFL division vulnerability rankings. We sort of touched on it last week with the AFC, which division winners are the most vulnerable going into the 2025 NFL season. So I made a list here. Ziggy will react to that list. I did some amending to it from the original first draft, and Ziggy said that was much better than the first copy I had. We could revisit
Still
that.
not good.
Still not good, maybe, but we'll visit that. And then a couple minicamp quick hitters. Ziggy wanted to react to Bradley Chubb had a take on the Dolphins, saying that they lied about their culture last year. And if you dive into that story, there was I don't think anything too crazy, but there were some weird little tidbits in there. And then I want to talk a bit about Bryce Young and what's going on with Carolina. I have some interesting opinions on Bryce Young, a good friend, former friend of the show, Bryce Young. So let's dive into it, Ziggy. The NFL division vulnerability rankings. I'm just going to go, I think it would be better if I went 8-1 for this list here. Build up the excitement for who's the most vulnerable heading into the season. So we'll dive into it, and then you give me your initial reaction, and we'll touch on some of the teams, okay? We'll start off at number 8. I have the least...
So just to be clear, 8 is the least vulnerable.
Least vulnerable team, yes, the least vulnerable. The team I expect most to repeat as division champion, the Buffalo Bills. And anyone other than this is just wrong to me. 5 straight division championships for them. You know, the Dolphins are hanging around. They're always good. They're not great. The Patriots are expected to be a little bit better, and the Jets I find irrelevant this season. Even though they might have a couple storylines blow up as they usually do, but as far as competing for the division, no one's taken down Josh Allen, best quarterback in the division. And that's a very important thing here too when we're going through this. Do you have the best QB in the division? Because usually that helps indicate the winner. Sometimes, most of the time. 7, I have the Chiefs. Pretty crazy. 9 straight division titles. Chargers are expected to take a big jump. The Broncos are expected to take a big jump. But until I see it, I'm not going to believe it. And this is the conversation we have year after year with Kansas City now. It's, oh, here comes Justin Herbert. Jim Harbaugh's in town. And the Chiefs go 15-2. They win fluky games. They win close games. That's what they do. And they're going to be hosting playoff games in December and January. So I got the Chiefs at 7. At 6, a team that I moved from, I think, all the way up at 2 down to 6 upon further reflection, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who quietly have won 4 straight division titles in the NFC South. Baker Mayfield's resurgence has been unbelievable. Last year, 4,500 yards, 41 touchdowns. Baker's just been great. And where's the competition coming from? It's not going to be Carolina, despite what I may say later about Bryce Young. It's not going to be the Saints. Maybe the Falcons. But it feels like at this point saying, watch out for Atlanta this year is more of a yearly tradition rather than something we need to actually take seriously. But I know Michael Penix is your guy, so I don't want to offend you there. 5, the Houston Texans. I really think Houston, I'd be surprised if Jacksonville took down Houston. That's the biggest competitor. Trevor Lawrence, you're waiting. As far as anyone goes with who needs to prove something, Trevor Lawrence might be number 1 in the NFL this year. If he gets going, we're going to have a race. But I don't see anything coming from the Colts. Despite what they're saying about Cam Ward, he's unproven right now. I got the Texans at 5, just a defense that'll have a high floor for them. 4, this is where we start to get interesting here now, because we got some pretty good teams left of the 4 vulnerable division champions. I have the Philadelphia Eagles at 4. There has not been a repeat division champion in the NFC East since 2001 through 2004. Do I think they have the best quarterback in the division? No. I'd say that's Jayden Daniels right now. But really what it comes down to is, do I think that Commanders team... I know you like Jalen Hurts. I know. But I just look at the Commanders. I say, as a team, as a whole, the Eagles have by far the best roster in this division still. And I have them at 4. 4 is pretty high up, though. That's fair. That's more vulnerable than not compared to the 8 teams we have. So 3, the Detroit Lions. And this is weird to me because I think the Lions on paper are as good as anyone in the league. But the tough schedule, Packers are a really good team. The Vikings and the Bears both could be really good. There's a lot of questions around Detroit with losing the coordinators, and guys are returning from injury, which is great, but they've lost some offensive line pieces. We'll get into Detroit a bit later. 2, we got 2 left, the Rams and the Ravens. I have the Baltimore Ravens at 2. 2 straight division champions, yes. I don't think the Steelers are going to really compete as far as being able to unseat them for the division crown. But they will be pesky, and they always are able to steal a game or 2 late in the year. The Browns are relevant, but the biggest competition, perhaps more than anyone on this list, is Joe Burrow and the Bengals should be back. They should be. All you need is the defense to be awake, and the Bengals will be competing. At 1, the Rams. Matt Stafford, best quarterback in the division. Devontae Adams is in town now, but the 49ers have a really, really light schedule, and everyone should be coming back. I think the Rams are still the best team in that division, but as far as competition, not too worried about the Cardinals. Sam Darnold in Seattle, good defense, but not too worried about them. I think it's really a 2-horse race here between the Rams and the 49ers, but it's one that San Francisco can easily win. So what do you think of that, Ziggy? I'll real quick, 8-1. Bills, Chiefs, Bucs, Texans is 8-5. 4-1. Eagles, Lions, Ravens, Rams.
I think there's a lot to like about that list.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Even though this isn't exactly what the Vegas odds say, I think Bills 1, Chiefs 2 just has to be correct. I remember I was on a call with...
We're 8-7, right? 8-7?
Yeah, 8-7. Yeah, excuse me. I was on a call with Sheil Kapadia after the Broncos Russell Wilson trade, and we were talking boy, the Raiders are starting to look good. The Broncos are starting to look good. This Justin Herbert guy's really starting to pick it up. This division might not be the Chiefs anymore. And then they won it 3 years in a row. This division, I understand that the Chargers are supposed to be a lot better. I understand the Broncos are supposed to be better. I get those are good teams. But the Chiefs have just had a stranglehold on this division for so long. And if you look at the quarterback difference factor, Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen are the quarterback difference factors in the NFL.
Yeah, well, the difference between Buffalo and Kansas City in that regard is I just, Drake May, Justin Fields,
I can't see Buffalo.
Unless if Josh Allen gets hurt, Buffalo will win the AFC East. That will happen. I think you could write that down. The Chiefs, there's a world where you could, Herbert's he's close to that level, that Mahomes, Allen, the top guys in the league. but they're just not there as a team. And like they're tough, and they'll be a wild card team probably. But the Chiefs find these ways to win these games. The games that
I don't
matter.
have it in me to pick against the Chiefs.
No, I think it's crazy.
What this is.
I think it's crazy to pick against them until we see it. And that's some people may say that's unfair because at some point they're probably going to let go of the reins. But I don't think it's crazy to pick them until they do. Like they're just better than these teams. And I'm not buying Denver. I know a lot of people are. I'm not there. So you agree with 8-7?
Yes, and I start moving off the train at 6.
Almost immediately.
I don't think there's a huge delta on the Bucs here, but I have the Texans very firmly slotted into that 6th spot.
Sure.
One of the things I think to be looking at is anytime you're assessing these divisions, there's 2 things to think about. One is, are you the best team by a decent margin? Mm-hmm. But the other is, are there other teams in the division that can actually push you? So like, even if you think the Rams are the best team in the NFC West by a decent margin, which they might be, there's 3 other teams there that can push them. Even if you think the Ravens are the best team by a decent margin, 2 other teams, Eagles, 2 other teams. The Texans, I really think it is only one. I understand people are excited about the Colts because Daniel Jones might start football games for them. But think about what I just said. People are excited about the Colts because they might have Daniel Jones as their starting quarterback.
Yeah.
Does that sound like a division winner? I get why you're excited. I'd be excited to have a player who can play other than Anthony Richardson too when he gets hurt or sucks. But I really think it's only the Jaguars. And the Jaguars, I mean, we've seen it. They can lose the division up 8-1.
I think that who's 5? Do you have the Bucs at 5?
Yes, I have the Bucs at 5.
Okay, so we're still in the same ballpark here with Texans and Bucs being the next 2 teams. To me, it came down to I just cannot see the Panthers or the Saints, right? We can agree, like it'll take a lot for either of those teams to win the South.
I just think the Falcons are closer to the Bucs than the Jaguars are to the Texans.
I think that's fair to say, but the reason that I put the Bucs as less vulnerable is because I think the Falcons feel like if you were to take like the floor and the ceiling for each team, I think the Falcons, you could kind of slot, like they'll probably win 8 or 9 games. Where the Jaguars, I think they can win 6, or I think they can win, double-digit games if it all works out. So I kind of rolled the dice on that, and I think the Colts are a better contender than either the other 2 NFC South teams. So that's where I
don't think they're any different than the Panthers.
The Colts versus the Panthers, you think is the same?
Yes, and I'll say this.
Colts have they have a much better defense, don't they?
Yeah, well, here's the other. I actually don't think that's true when Derek Brown comes back. People forget how much his absence nuked the Panthers' defense last year.
I mean, look, fair. I don't think that the Colts are, way better. I think they're better than Carolina. I just think they're better than Carolina.
Yeah, I will say this though. I expect the Texans to improve significantly next year. I think Bobby Slowick's time was up last year, and you saw it. I think the offensive line had huge issues. That's changed. The Buccaneers, it seems to me like they treaded water well. The Falcons and the Panthers around them got better.
Sort of. I think that you can look at these teams, and we talk about people coming back from injuries as being really important. Like Godwin coming back, Emeka Ibuka joining. I think the Bucs offense should be really good. Like, I think this should be one of the better offenses in football again. And Baker Mayfield, the same way that we talk about Jared Goff now, you can't really say, oh, we're going to wait for Goff to implode, or it's somewhat unfair to say that. Sort of unfair to say that with Baker, too. He's been, I think this Thursday, I'm thinking we might do quarterback rankings. Like, there might need to be serious contemplation about Baker Mayfield in the top 10. And I need to think about this a little more, but
the problem
he's been
about
great.
The problem with Baker Mayfield, though, is if he gets even a minor injury, his performance falls off a cliff.
Even if that's the case, though, and when making this sort of list here, I don't know. Baker's been healthy 2 years in a row.
I'm not talking about him like throwing out his shoulder. I'm talking when Baker Mayfield gets small injuries, the kinds of injuries you can reasonably expect someone to get. Mm-hmm. It impacts his performance a lot more than, say, CJ Stroud. Mm-hmm. It's funny, we're having this like really vigorous debate over which of these teams is like one of the 3 safest instead of the 4 safest teams in the league.
I was just thinking the same thing. I think look, if we could flip-flop them either way, and I'd be like, that was one of the real debates I had in my head was Bucs or Texans. And I just don't really see. I don't see either of them losing their division. Which, every year it seems that you have a handful of new division winners, but like last year we didn't, and I'd be surprised to see either of these guys be taken down. Okay,
I'm not picking the Bucs to win their division.
Oh, you're picking Atlanta?
I'll just put that out there. Yeah.
Again,
which might make you think it's weird that I have them down here, but I don't think Atlanta's guaranteed to win or anything. But now we're moving up to 4. At 4, I definitely do not have the Eagles. At 4, I've got the Ravens.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
The reasoning for that is simple. I said earlier, you might be somebody who thinks that the Ravens are vulnerable because they can get pushed by the Steelers and by the Bengals. I do not think that is true. I am very, very low on the Steelers team because I'm very, very low on Aaron Rodgers. I'm not going to say that because I called the New York thing being a disaster. That proves I'm right. The New York thing was a disaster for a lot of reasons. But I struggle. I mean, the TJ Watt holdout has me worried. This team is getting old. They've got a bad offensive line, which is not a good combination. We've got old Aaron Rodgers. I don't think this team is any good. So then, the Bengals are a very good football team, but I think the Ravens are just better. The Bengals, they need their defense to improve significantly next year if they want to hang with the Ravens. Because the Ravens have almost as good, or arguably, if Derrick Henry plays a great season, a better offense with a much better defense.
Mm-hmm.
And the Browns might be the least likely team in the entire NFL to win their division. The only contender I can see for that title is the Giants. So I think there's only one team that can push the Ravens. Maybe the Bengals will. I might pick the Bengals to win the division. But I think given that situation, I'm putting them as relatively safe.
I think I agree with you that I believe the Ravens are the best team in the division still. I know a lot of people like Cincinnati. I expect Baltimore to win the division. But yeah, it really does come down to, of all the teams on this list, right, who are competing against the number 2 team in their division, the Bengals might be the scariest one. And I know last year they weren't the record wasn't very good. Didn't they? What'd they win? 5 or 6 to close it out, right? I can't remember the exact numbers. 5 or 6.
Hot.
They got hot at the right time. Lamar Jackson is 6-1 against Joe Burrow. But when you look at these games, razor thin margins. They're winning by 3 points, winning by 1 point.
It's NFC North football.
It but Burrow in these games, 392 yards, 5 touchdowns and a 3-point loss, 428 yards, 4 touchdowns and a 1-point loss. The Ravens
that's the thing. The Ravens have an offense that can keep up with the Bengals and a defense that can beat teams that aren't the Bengals.
Oh, no, I know. And I understand. I agree with you that Baltimore is the better team. But these AFC North games, the Browns can steal one. The Steelers can steal one. I think that the Bengals are going to be better against lesser competition this year. I have a hard time thinking the defense will be that bad again. It was just, it was atrocious. And it's crazy when you go back and look at Joe Burrow last year, it really is nuts how good he was for how bad for how the Bengals were clawing for a final playoff spot and ultimately not getting it. So yeah, I get what you're saying. I think the Ravens, again, I'd feel comfortable we should win this division if I were a Ravens fan. But the Bengals, if they get hot, they can score with the best teams in football. And I just think the Eagles, again, they're the best team in the NFC East to me. But I think I would not be shocked if Dallas, I'm including Dallas or the Commanders, push them really hard for that division. Dallas should be a lot better. And Washington, while I don't think they're a 13-win team like some people do, I wouldn't be surprised if 11 or 12 wins is in play to win the division. I don't think it will happen. That's, again, why I have them as 4th on the vulnerability here. So, yeah, I had the Eagles at 4 there. So who do you have at 3?
At 3, this is another place where I'm sort of departing from conventional wisdom. I've got the Lions. And the reason for that is simple.
Me too.
You've got a team that was 6-0 in their division last year. Not get a whole lot worse. Now, I know people are saying, what about the coordinators? What about the coordinators? What about the coordinators? Yeah, sure, you lost some coordinators, but you still have, by players, maybe the best offense in football, certainly up there. Probably not the best, but definitely top 5. You've got so many players on defense coming back. I think this Lions team, I don't expect them to win 15 games last year, but they dominated the division. And if you dominate your division, if you go 6-0 in the division, you are probably winning the division. Even if they don't go 6-0, right? They won this division. The Vikings had a great season and almost beat them in the division, but I expect the Vikings, we're not winning 14 games next year. That's not happening.
No, that won't.
You know that's not happening. Then they were 4 games away from the Packers, right? If you expect the Vikings to take a step back, even if the Packers play as well as they did last year, maybe even a little bit better, the Lions would have to be 3 games worse in order to have the division in question. I know it's very popular to hate on the Lions right now, to say, look, they're in danger. They lost these coordinators. Dan Campbell's overrated. This has if you consider both sides of the ball, maybe the most talented roster in the NFL. They've got so many players coming back from injury. I'm not betting against them.
Yeah, here's the thing with Detroit, and there's a reason we both have them at 3. Like, I know it sounded like when you're talking like I'm not betting against them, like they would be much lower on this list. But at the end of the day, there are a lot of key losses to this team. Like, we're sitting around talking about Detroit as if they're, an unbeatable force a lot of last season. And we watched all the guys get hurt and they were still great. And I think that's lingering into the season, as it should, right? They're a very good football team. But losing these pieces on the offensive line, like that was the identity of the team, is the offensive line, the toughness here. And I don't expect them to fall off the face of the earth, but the floor to me is lower than, I think they're probably a 10 or 11 win team this season, which is still a very good team. But that schedule is brutal on the road. And Jared Goff is going to, now again, with Jared Goff, just like I said with Baker Mayfield, he should be very good this year. We all expect him to. But at times he felt unstoppable last year. And that's sort of what led to Detroit being an unstoppable team, was Jared Goff was just wildly efficient. Every time he dropped back to pass, it felt like a completion was coming. And I just want to see it another year here with Frank Ragnow gone, with Kevin Zeitler gone. Like, there are a couple key pieces up front missing. If he has a little bit less time, is Jared Goff going to be as dominant as he was last season, where he's a top 5 MVP candidate? I expect him to be very good, but Detroit steps down a tier, but Detroit steps down a little bit from that unbeatable phase if he's not great himself. And we saw it in the playoff game, right? He was the reason they lost that playoff game, along with the defense. The defense was horrible.
And Jared Goff has a stinker or two every year, and the Lions were lucky to win his stinkers in the regular season. But you know what you're getting. And as much as people talk about the Lions' difficult schedule, and it is difficult, I get there's the home road splits, but the Bears, Packers, and Vikings have very difficult schedules too. They're playing most of the same teams.
The other thing as well,
so it's hard for me to sit back and say that, well, the Lions have such a hard schedule. Everyone else does too.
They do. A couple of those, first place games they have make it tougher. But the other thing about Detroit is, if you're better than teams, you're better than them. You know what I mean? Like, it could be a really tough schedule, but if Detroit's the best team in football next year, it's those other teams that are worried about you, as opposed, like, you are the hunter. And last year, Detroit was. They were going in and beating people up basically everywhere they went until the whole team was injured. Now, as far as a competition standpoint goes with the Lions, I reached out to our good buddy Tom Monroe, diehard Lions fan, a good friend of the show, and I asked him, okay, like who's the scariest team to you right now? And I'm curious if the Lions Nation, or the Lions fans who listen to this show, would agree. He actually said it was the Vikings. He said he feels that Jordan Love, were assessing him on those 9-10 games and talking about that as if that's the Jordan Love, like that's his natural form, as opposed to that being his peak. And with the Vikings, he's saying if JJ McCarthy figures it out, that roster is scarier to him than Green Bay. Now, let me know what you think, Lions fans. I disagree with that. I think if I were a Detroit fan, it has to be Green Bay to me, because I think that Jordan Love being really good again is probably more likely than JJ McCarthy being really good. And as everyone knows, quarterback's the most important position. This Green Bay team, when they're on, feels like they can beat anyone. And Detroit has simply had the Vikings number. Like, I hate this as a Viking fan, but every time we play them, it feels like something's going to go wrong at some point. And we can't beat them. It's insane. We can't beat the Lions. But that's where we are. I feel like it has to be Green Bay, even if our Lions guy is picking the Vikings.
I will say this. I checked. The odds for the NFC North have actually moved pretty substantially since they've opened. The Packers and the Vikings are basically tied. Unnamed Sportsbook has the Packers at 270 and the Vikings at 290. So, but Tom Monroe may not be as far off as someone like me is inclined to think.
Do you remember where they started?
They started down with the Bears at like 500.
So the Vikings are moving up.
And they're moving up substantially.
Well, you know what it is? We have all these media guys coming out and saying, like, you got to buy Minnesota. And me and you are sitting here as Vikings fans saying, like, let's slow this thing down. Like, we don't need to have sky-high expectations.
That's what it is. I think people took a look and said the biggest complaint about JJ McCarthy is a game manager who needs a great team around him. He needs great weapons. He needs a good offensive line. He needs good running backs. And then they realized, wait a second, that's the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, and then the media is talking about it and saying that this team's like I don't want the sky high expectations. I feel like it was nice kind of flying under the radar, and in the back of our heads, we knew as Vikings fans, yeah, if he looks good, this team should be pretty dangerous. But now, as we're moving through the offseason, it's starting to feel a bit more like, okay, like we gotta get something going early this year, and it's gonna be hard. Like it's tough when you have a rookie quarterback. You can't just, and I'm calling him a rookie. But you can't just throw in these expectations to be great immediately. I think Jayden Daniels and CJ Stroud have sort of they've sort of now misrepresented what most rookies look like, first year starters look like, and JJ's got a pretty tall task in front of him. But I would say you would say the Green Bay too, though, right?
I think it's a toss up.
Really? What is happening? Have I like?
I think both of those teams are teams with very good rosters and a high amount of quarterback variance. I think the Packers, there's less quarterback variance, but Minnesota has the better roster. So I think it's close.
It's definitely close. And also you can't totally leave out Chicago. In most of these division vulnerability rankings.
But I want to so bad.
You should. We probably can. Like, do I think the Bears are going to win the division? No. But when we look at these other teams, in the AFC East, like the Jets, no shot. In the AFC West, the Raiders, really no shot. I know people like Geno, but come on. The Saints, no shot. The Titans, I don't think so. Like the Bears are by far the best fourth place team in any division.
They're the second best. I think whoever you pick between the Seahawks and the Cardinals is the best when it comes to winning their division.
Yeah, that's fair.
The Bears just have so much working against them momentum-wise, whereas the Cardinals and the Seahawks, the Cardinals won 8 games, the Seahawks won 10 and tied the Rams. They lost on a tiebreaker. Like, those were not bad teams last year. The Bears were a bad team last year.
They were, but the ceiling's higher for Chicago than it is for the Seahawks or the Cardinals to me.
Sure.
And that's where
I don't think they're going to get there this year.
Probably not. I think they're a 2026 team to keep an eye on. And you want to see year one, Caleb taking jumps with Ben Johnson, cleaning up mistakes. Definitely the sacks. 68 sacks last year. That needs to come down. But the one thing that the Lions, well, again, now I sort of just comparing across the division, like the Packers just lack that game-breaking dude, I think, on both sides of the ball. Josh Jacobs is awesome. He's a very, very good running back. But they don't have Xavier McKinney, also really good, but they don't have the pass rusher who could take over a series. They don't have
they do.
Who?
Edgerrin Cooper.
Oh, well.
You're going to find out next year, Paul. You are going to
I think I was on Edgerrin Cooper before anyone on this show. I was the Edgerrin Cooper guy. I mean, you're taking that title from me here. But I mean, as far as defensive ends go here, I don't think you have. Sure, if you want to put Edgerrin Cooper off the edge, I'll give you that. Offensively, though, you're relying on a bunch of guys. The same thing as last year. It's the same situation. You're relying on a bunch of guys, hopefully, all taking a little step forward, and Matthew Golden being really good. While I think
that does make it a little different than last year.
They do have someone. Yes,
first round pick coming in.
Yes, they do, but they also don't have Christian Watson for most of the year. So we'll see what happens there. The Vikings and Lions, though, they have those guys. Like Justin Jefferson, you really, whenever you look at stats, it sort of puts into perspective how great Justin Jefferson is. Like he's going to be, assuming he stays healthy, hopefully he stays healthy, Like, he's going to blow away the record for most receiving yards through 6 seasons. It's a per game basis. Like, he's
Justin
unreal.
Jefferson had 1,500 yards and 10 touchdowns last year, and nobody cared.
Yeah, like Jefferson
whatever,
and Amon-Ra, when they need to play, Amon-Ra is, it feels like you're playing the Lions. It's 3rd and 6, and Amon-Ra is 8 yards, runs an 8-yard curl, and no one's guarding him. But he's great. And you have guys that can make these plays. So Green Bay, their team, I think, is very good, but they don't have the game breaker on offense. So you're kind of relying on all of them to take the step forward, and they need to. And if they do, I think they're the most dangerous of all the NFC North opponents to Detroit. But it's going to be a fun race. So, okay. So then at 2, you have Philly and 1, the Rams.
Yeah, I've got Philly at 2. Just because I feel better about the other teams. You mentioned Jayden Daniels earlier. I think this Commanders team, people forget they were a threat to beat the Eagles in the division last year. It was close. Obviously, the Eagles pulled away with it at the end, but it's not as if the Eagles ran away of that division with rookie Jayden Daniels. You had in year 2 Jayden Daniels. I think that could be different. And then 1, I have no idea who's winning the NFC West. I think any 4 of those teams could win. Like you say, people want to discount the Seahawks. They were 10-7 last year and tied the division. The Cardinals won 8 games. The only bad team in the division last year was the 49ers, and they're getting all their players back. Mm-hmm. So does Matthew Stafford stay healthy? How much does Devontae Adams actually have in the tank? It's a messy division. That's the team when we do our division previews. I am looking forward to picking a winner the least. Because I think there's a good argument for every single team to win that division.
No, they're all good teams. We touched on it just a second ago. I have the Rams.
And none of them are great teams.
No, I think the Rams have great potential when you get to the playoffs, if that makes sense. They could be a wild card team, and I think they're built to win in the playoffs with Stafford at quarterback. But as far as winning the division, would it surprise me if they're 10-7? And they sneak in as the 6 or the 7 seed, and then you're sitting there at the 1. You have Detroit or Philly at the 1 going, oh, shit, we have to take on these guys. Detroit would probably be the 1, right? Getting the 1 seed, playing once again the Rams in that building. You have Stafford in Detroit. That's they are a tough out against anybody. And you saw what happened with Philly. Philly steamrolled everyone on their way to the Super Bowl, and the Rams had a shot from the 20-yard line to go to the NFC Championship game. And the Rams might win the Super Bowl if they beat Philly. That's how close they were, 20 yards away from a real shot. Because I probably would have picked them against the Commanders. So when you talk about Philly real quick, I know I mentioned a second ago the Cowboys and the Commanders. I realized in the back of my head, I'm kind of making the argument for Philly being more vulnerable than the Ravens when we were having that conversation. I think the Ravens, again, with the Bengals, are a more serious threat than the Commanders or Cowboys. That's why I think they're more vulnerable. But Washington, to me, is the team. They're one of the few teams in the league this year that I'm circling saying, who are these guys going to be? Are they going to progress? They were 12-5 last year, and that's a serious season. Are they going to be able to progress now that they add in Laramie Tunsil, they add in Deebo Samuel? They've made some moves that suggest we're going for it right now. And I applaud them for that because Jayden Daniels looked every bit like a top 5 quarterback last season. And this is where people will get mad at me. I do, however, think that they're more likely to regress while remaining a threat. They can always get in. They got hot last year at the right time and could beat anybody. As a whole, I think they're more likely to regress in the win column a little bit. Because when you really dive deep into it, they were 8-2 in regular season games decided by 7 points or fewer. You look at them playing, they beat the Titans barely. They beat the Saints they beat the Titans pretty good. Beat the Saints by 1. Eagles without Hurts. Falcons overtime. Cowboys without Jaden or Dak playing. A lot of that big stretch 7-game win streak they had going into the playoffs or throughout the playoffs as well was against some teams where, they were missing a few guys. Or they were beating teams they probably should have beat by more in close games. And it's great to win, but I think Washington's closer to that 10-7 team that sneaks in as a wild card, as opposed to, they're going to go 12-5 again and push Philly for the division.
Yeah, but you have to keep in mind the Dallas Cowboys are regular season merchants.
No, they are. They are.
People have forgotten this. They won in 2021. They won 12 games. 2022, they won 12 games. 2023, they won 12 games. Then Dak gets hurt and they win 7. This team absolutely could win 12 regular season games next year. Do I expect anything from them in the playoffs besides maybe a wild card victory at best? No. But would it be a shock if the Cowboys win the division? I mean, Dak Prescott, I am not convinced he's washed. I think there's plenty of talent around him. If they can somehow make this CD Pickens grouping work, the defense should be good. They're getting Trayvon Diggs back, a player who I think lots of folks around the NFL have sort of forgotten about, which is weird. How does an interception machine on the Cowboys get forgotten about?
Yeah.
But nobody's talking about him as a big addition coming back to the team, right? No, this team could absolutely win 12 games. So when you talk about third teams in the division, the Cowboys are right there.
Oh, the Cowboys should be very good. I'm expecting them to get back to their regular selves. It's when you look at these teams. So we had 4 Eagles, 3 Lions, 2 Ravens. You flip flop the Ravens and Eagles. Those are all similar to me as far as their vulnerability. I think it's pretty close. They're the best team in their division. They're all Super Bowl potential teams who have a couple pretty big challengers knocking at the door. And, I think you could sort them however you want there. And we'll see which teams wind up taking the jump. Like for the Eagles, the Commanders right there, the Lions, the Packers right there, the Ravens, the Bengals. Those are teams that we're going to see this year. Are they Super Bowl contenders? Or are they, frisky wild card teams? And that's what they were last season. Although the Commanders, very frisky wild card team going to the NFC Championship game. But those are the teams that we're circling, saying, are any of them going to take that jump to elite status to challenge these guys at the top? And I think it's very possible that at least one, maybe 2 of them don't retain their division.
This year, more than last year, feels like a year where almost any division, anything could happen. Mm-hmm. I mean, even you go to the teams at the bottom. I mean, I'd be shocked if the Bills lost, but I can see worlds where the Chiefs lose, where the Texans lose. Yeah. It feels very different than last year, where it felt like there were so many teams where everyone around them was in a transitional state and they could just come in and ride on through. I'm very excited to see what comes this regular season.
So you brought up, and actually the final thing here, the Unnamed Sportsbook. The Unnamed Sportsbook ranking, according to odds, went Bills 8, Ravens at 7. So I had the Ravens at 2, you had them at 4. Sportsbooks had them at 7. The Eagles at 6, the Chiefs at 5. They view the Chiefs a little bit more vulnerable. The Bucs at 4, the Texans at 3. So I think that's where you're seeing, a little less favor towards Houston and Tampa Bay, where, we said that they're pretty safe. But these sports books, they're saying, well, they're not on the tier of the Lions and the Eagles, or the Eagles and the Chiefs and the Ravens, these teams. So that's where
these sports books hate the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers opened plus 400 last year to win the division.
Then they had the Lions at 2, and we all agree the Rams at 1. Detroit being at 2 and Detroit being at 3 on our list, it is crazy because I think we'll do a preseason power rankings, and they're probably going to be number 2 for me, or 3. And we have them at number 2 on the vulnerability rankings. That's, to me, that's the representation of the schedule. And because if the Lions had a lighter schedule, I think they're steamrolling through again. That's why I just can't get over the schedule.
Yeah, I mean, but the thing is that schedule, every team in the NFC North has to play most of those teams. But here's what you're not going to see. Yahoo Sports is running a series right now on the Lions. Top 10 injury news of the Lions 2024 season. Right now, they're on number 5.
That's
Carlton
horrible.
Davis breaks his jaw. So
that's horrible.
You are not going to see that story next year. The Lions will be healthy.
Hopefully not.
I mean, you're like free agent corner. You're supposed to save your secondary, breaks his jaw at the end of the season, and that's number 5. You have 4 injuries worse than that.
It was unfathomable injury luck in Detroit last year. And this is what's going to be fun to watch in the NFC North is the Lions and Packers both stayed pretty neutral to me as far as how I'm viewing them this year. I think actually Detroit probably took a little bit of a step back with the coordinators and the O-line. Green Bay didn't really make many moves. Nothing that excited me too much. And the Vikings and Bears went out and they made off-season additions, right? The Vikings shored up the line. They shored up both sides of the line. Same thing with Chicago. So the teams that needed to catch up a little bit, and once Sam Darnold left, I think the Vikings needed to catch up a bit. They did. And we're going to have to see, all right, what's the most important signings or what's the most important change? Is it Detroit getting the guys back? Is it Green Bay hoping for guys to grow into bigger roles? Or is it the Vikings and Bears who are bringing new guys in? And that's going to be fun to watch. It's because it's a different approaches to this offseason for each team. Not all of them were intentional, but it's different approaches. Which one's going to have the biggest impact? I tend to think that the Lions are going to be awesome again. But that schedule to me is it's brutal. Okay, so the last team we all had was the Bills, the least vulnerable. Now, the biggest contender to Buffalo would be the Miami Dolphins. I think we'd all agree on that, right? Some people actually might pick the Patriots. But Bradley Chubb, Dolphins defensive end, he was out all of last season, right? The entire year he was out. Bradley Chubb was just talking about the culture in Miami last year, and he was saying that the team was sort of lying about who they were. Now, Ziggy, I know that this story caught your attention, so I'll toss it over to you.
This caught my attention for two reasons. One is this might sound like Bradley Chubb calling out the team, but remember, he didn't play a snap for them last year. So this is actually him calling out only his teammates. So way to go, Bradley Chubb.
A weird decision, but yeah.
The Dolphins, it's been this way for a while. The vibes have just felt strange. Now, I don't care whether you like or don't like Mike McDaniel. It seems very clear to me that there's a cultural disconnect between how he is approaching things and how the team wants to approach things last year. It felt like last year they dipped a toe into culture change and that we're going to be a serious, hard-nosed football team, and then realized what that was like and then sort of backed off and wanted to be the fun-loving team. But neither of those approaches have really worked particularly well for the Dolphins. They need to figure out how to play serious, tough football. And I'm not saying Mike McDaniel is ruling that out, but when was the last time you had a player come out and say, yeah, we thought we were changing the culture, but we were just lying to ourselves? That's a really strong thing to say. It just feels like even though there's a lot of good players on this team, I still think Tua is good. Tyreek, if he comes back, is good. There's a lot of good players on the defense. It's hard for me to believe this team can do anything because it just seems like the culture is so bad. And I don't believe that Bradley Chubb is going to change it this.
Well, I messaged you too about the line he had in there where he said McDaniel will say a lot of things in a joking tone and that it's on the team to take it seriously. I was like, that's just like a weird comment to make about both your coach and the team, right? You're saying that the coach, you don't take the coach seriously and the guys need to start taking more of his advice to heart. I just thought that was a weird comment as well. Like, what do they think of McDaniel? Everyone says, brilliant football coach, but I don't know. That just didn't. I don't think it's a big deal. But there's something
exactly
off.
Who you hope Ben Johnson isn't.
I don't know. I like Mike McDaniel. I think he's a good coach.
I think he's a good coach. I think he's a great offensive coordinator. Maybe he'd even be a great head coach elsewhere. But I just do not believe he has it in him to give the Miami Dolphins what they need this year.
As in, do you think like the toughness? Are you talking more about being a leader of the team? That maybe while yes, we all acknowledge he's a great play caller, great offensive mind. That maybe he's not the leader that they need.
I'm not sure he's the kind of leader they need. But what do I know? I mean, it seems
I know. We're just speculating here.
Yeah, well, it seems to me like the kind of person they need is Brian Flores. But Brian Flores was an absolute disaster with these
good
guys.
luck.
Well, no, but this is what I mean is like, I wonder, maybe it's not McDaniel's fault at all, and maybe it's the players. It just seems like this locker room has disconnect. I'm not going to put it all on Tua because I don't think it's all on Tua, but it seems like there's always a disconnect between the Tua Tagovailoa locker room and whoever the head coach is. It didn't work with Brian Flores. They hired the opposite of Brian Flores. That didn't work either. Like, I don't know what this team needs to do to take football seriously.
Could you imagine Brian Flores coming back to Miami, walking in the locker room, just making eye contact with Tua, and he's like, "I'm back, baby." Tua would be like, shit his pants right in the locker room.
That'd be so terrible. But there's one word I would have to describe this team right now. It's dysfunctional. And they've been dysfunctional Like, you remember that collapsed on 2023 when I kept saying they were going to lose the division, and then miraculously they actually did.
Yeah, we didn't take you seriously.
I think once that happened, the McDaniel locker room it hasn't been right since. Because that seemed about right, though. Like, that was the turning point. And since then, nothing has gone right for this team internally.
The one misconception that I think there is about the Dolphins this season is that you're going to see some people, and I've seen quite a few now, who have come out and said they think this team might just suck. Like, be really like one of the worst.
When people were telling me the Patriots had a chance to win the division, I heard someone say, well, they've got 4 free wins against the Jets and the Dolphins because those teams are both garbage.
Yeah, and anyone who's saying that about Miami, they're just not looking at the information in front of them. They're not understanding who they've been with Tua. Well, like, you can say you don't trust Tua in the big games, and the Dolphins over the last 2 years are 1-10 against teams over 500. They're also 18-5 against teams under 500. It's actually the biggest discrepancy in winning percentage against over and under 500 teams in the last 30 years. Like, if you take those numbers. So what you have is a team that has a decent floor. Like, they will beat the teams that they should beat, or at least most of them, as long as Tua is playing. But they're going to struggle, and they have against the Mahomes teams, the Josh Allen, the Lamar teams. Like, they lose those games. And it's actually amazing how consistently it happens. But
so you're saying they've got Brian Kelly leading their
team. Essentially. And they're sort of like the Notre Dame teams before we got Marcus Freeman. But when you look at Miami, they are a team that should be competing for a wild card spot. And I'd be really surprised if they aren't. It's just to say they're going to suck. I think that's wrong with who they've been this entire time. They don't have a crazy schedule. They have all the home games against the Chargers, Bills, Ravens, Commanders, Bengals, and Bucs. Those are the toughest games they have on the schedule all year. They're going to need to find a way to beat some of them if they're going to actually be a serious team this season. But I think there's a really good chance that we're sitting here again in week 16 and saying, all right, Miami's a game out of the wild card, and they're going to need a couple things to break their way, but they're in contention. The same, like last year, they were in contention all the way to the last week of the season. And they had a horrible year with Tua getting hurt and defensive guys getting hurt. Like, it was a disaster, and they were still right there. So I don't think they'll suck. But they're probably a just missed the playoffs team.
I am keeping an eye on, though. This is the sort of thing that doesn't get talked about a lot on shows like this, but Stephen Ross just made Tom Garfinkel, who was the president of the Dolphins, he put him into the general manager hierarchy. So Chris Greer, general manager, now reports to him.
Okay.
I am starting to get the sense that you could see a change in the structure of the Dolphins, either at the head coach or the GM or both level, mid-season. Bringing in a new guy and saying the GM doesn't report to me anymore, he reports to the team president, is the exact kind of thing you do when you're thinking about blowing it up. If they you talked about their schedule. They've got some important games early. They open in Indianapolis. You've got to win that game if you want a wild card spot in the AFC. They host the Patriots. They're at Buffalo. They host the Jets. So they follow that up with 3 divisional games. If the Dolphins get off to a bad start, I think Mike McDaniel could get fired in the middle of the season.
And so I guess sort of playing devil's advocate with myself here, I think the offense will be fine, but they lost a lot of key guys in that secondary, and Jalen Ramsey's on the block. There's a world that secondary starts to get picked apart, especially when I just said the teams. You got Herbert, you got Josh Allen twice, you got Lamar, you got Burrow, Baker, Jayden Daniels. Like, I'm assuming Jalen Ramsey will be gone. For the people who are arguing Miami will be really bad, it's the defensive side of the ball that could implode. And if that implodes, is Tua next year? Do you think Tua is good enough to keep up the same way we talked about Burrow, right? Keeping up. I don't know. If you get 2023
He's
Tua,
not Joe Burrow.
Yeah. If you get 2023 Tua, then yeah, I get them when they're putting up 70 points on the Broncos. Like that team will steal a few games they probably should lose, but if you get last season's Dolphins, that's how you're in line for the terrible year. I just don't think that they'll be horrible.
I mean, they need Jonnu Smith back. I don't really know.
He's probably also going to go.
This Jonnu Smith situation drag out. Like Jalen Ramsey, I totally get moving off of. And I understand you don't want to pay Jonnu Smith some giant contract, but you so desperately. I mean, I think he was one of the biggest surprises in the entire NFL last season, just how well he was able to function in that offense. And the Dolphins, let's be clear, they have the cap space to pay him this year and next year. I do not understand this game they're playing with Jonnu Smith.
Yeah.
It seems super weird. And these are the kinds of things. I think Stephen Ross is sleeper, one of the worst owners in the NFL. I mean, you saw how badly he managed. He asked Brian Flores.
I don't know if he's a sleeper. Yeah.
I mean, I don't hear him mention of the David Teppers and the Paul Browns of the NFL. I think he's secretly one of the worst owners out there. And an impulsive, terrible decision at head coach in the middle of the season is exactly the sort of thing he'd love to do.
This is what it's all about. It's all about Ziggy going after billionaires 45 minutes into like that. That's what it's all about in the offseason here. We're waiting to see, Stephen Ross come back at Ziggy. Getting a little back and forth here. Speaking, you said of bad owners with David Tepper. We'll close out the show with this today here. What a way to close out the show. The Carolina Panthers. But I think it's worth noting the Bryce Young turnaround. And Bryce Young is generating a lot of buzz at Panthers camp. Now, and most people listening right now, you're going, okay, like time to turn off the show. We're talking about the Panthers for the final few minutes here.
Hold on. I know Jack's not sitting there next to you, but Bryce Young stinks. He's a terrible player. He is bad in college. He's a bum. He's never going to do anything in the NFL.
So that's the take that Jack
would. 0-17.
That's the Jack take, right? Appreciate you filling in there for Jack today. But I'm actually excited to watch Bryce this season. I don't think the Panthers are, and look, we're not going to talk about the Panthers a ton this year, so I'm not expecting them to be competing for a wild card or for the NFC South. But I will say, you keep your eye on Bryce Young early on in the year, because what he's going through is a pretty cool story. And we've had a couple of them in the NFL recently. We've seen Baker Mayfield resurgence, right? What are you smiling at?
I'm just saying, NFL.com analyst Mark Ross called Bryce Young a guaranteed riser.
Sure, and this is what I'm getting at. You've seen some guys like Baker Mayfield have a resurgence. You saw Geno Smith a few years ago have a resurgence.
You're not going to humor that?
What, a riser?
Yeah, guaranteed riser. Come on.
All right. Yeah,
we don't have Jack here.
Yeah.
I'm trying. Okay, I apologize. I was trying too hard to fill in for Jack. That's my bad. I'm going to learn from this experience. I'm going to do better next time.
Yeah, you make as many of those jokes as you want. I'll laugh at them. I'm with you. You're ruining a great point here, though. I was really trying to make a great point on what does Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith, Bryce Young have in common. Dave Canales has been there for all of them, head coach of the Panthers. He was there in Tampa when Baker first started to come back. He was there with Geno as the QB coach in 2022 in Seattle when Geno had his big breakout year. And with Bryce, in the NFL right now, it's such a and I think it's just actually part of culture in general that we're seeing, this instant gratification world of we need success immediately or we're moving on. It used to be when I was a kid, which wasn't that long ago. I remember year 3 of Christian Ponder. I was sitting back going, all right, this is the year he breaks out, man. And Christian Ponder.
To be fair, I think it's probably good we moved away from that.
It's probably good, but Christian Ponder is throwing for 80 yards a game. Adrian Peterson would run for 230 and Ponder would have 75. It's wait a second, that's supposed to be flipped, right? And now we're in a time where if you're not good right away, people are very quick to move off of you. So when Bryce Young was benched, after 2 games last year, he'd been playing for a year and 2 games. For a lot of guys right now, that could be it. That could mentally destroy you. And who knows if you'll get a chance again. And it was kind of a bold move for Canales to do it. Now he probably was in the back of his head thinking, yeah, this guy's done. But when Andy Dalton went down, Bryce Young played really well at the end of last season. He had 10 touchdowns, 10 touchdowns total, 7 passing, 3 rushing, and 0 picks. Final 3 games of the year, 15 touchdown passes in the final 10 games to 6 interceptions. There was real growth in Carolina for a guy that everyone thought was just a bust, especially when you compared him to CJ Stroud and what he was doing. And apparently in training camp, like, guys are saying, JC Horn's coming out saying, like, there's a different attitude to Bryce Young right now. They got him Tet McMillan. His weapons aren't the best in the world, but it's the best cast that he's had. And I don't think Carolina's going to win the division. I don't think they're going to be a playoff team. But they're a team to pay attention to. Because if they are decent, and if Bryce Young actually does take a step, they could challenge Tampa Bay. Like, that's not out of the question for this season. And I'm excited for Bryce because, you know, it's tough to overcome that. But just keep an eye on the Bucs, on the Panthers.
Yeah, well, the Panthers placed a substantial bet on Bryce Young and taking Tet McMillan, right? Even though Derek Brown coming back is going to have a substantial impact, this was still the worst defense in the NFL last year. And it's not as if there wasn't anyone good they could have taken it in, right? Michael Williams was up there. Kenneth Grant was up there. I mean, if you're a Shamar Stewart guy, if you're a Jalen Walker guy, if you're a Walter Nolan guy, but there were a lot of defensive players they could have gone for there. And they said, no, we don't need any of that. Mm-hmm. We're not even going to go offensive line, which I think was a good call. We're going to take Tet McMillan, give Bryce Young the best weapon of his career because we think that having a decent player around him could elevate him. You don't place that bet if you don't believe in your quarterback. Now, how much that should mean, I'm not sure. I think Dave Canales is tied to Bryce Young in an important way. He really needs this Bryce Young thing to be a success next year. But they still placed a bet on it. Right? This is not all media smoke that Bryce Young could be good next year. Inside the Panthers building, people are willing to stake their careers on Bryce Young, maybe not being a superstar, but being a functional quarterback that can play decent football for them. And if after year one, you had told me that there's a chance entering year 3, Bryce Young plays decent football, what Panthers fan is not going to take that?
Yeah. And Canales' quotes were, he's showing mastery of what we're doing. The decision-making was excellent at minicamp. And this is the smoke screen. This is the time of year where it's all, you know, joy. It's utopias at these training camps, or mini camps. But
yeah, unfortunately, we heard a lot about how Justin Fields had gotten much more comfortable with the offense. The timing was right. Everything was clicking. But the difference is Bryce Young, I mean, he's overcome, for a number 1 overall pick, he's overcome a huge amount of adversity in his career.
When you saw the progression.
Coming back from getting benched like that and not checking out is hard to do. If anybody's going to be able to do it, I think he's got the mentality. And as you said, at the end of last season, he may not have been the best quarterback in the NFL, but he was good. He was playing solid football. I think there is a reason to believe. Now, that said, I don't believe it all. I think that Bryce Young is going to have a bad year, that the Panthers should have done something other than take a wide receiver, that they probably should have been looking into quarterback heavily this draft. But who knows?
Just keep an eye out. That's all I'm saying. I'm not asking you to place bets on these guys. I'm not asking you to go out and stake your reputation on the Panthers. I'm just saying give them the slightest bit of attention, and we'll see what happens. And hopefully Bryce does well. He's an easy guy to root for. So, all right, we will wrap it up there. A little bit of division vulnerability, and then diving into the Dolphins and the Panthers. I mean, what more can you want on a Tuesday afternoon than listening to some Dolphins and Panthers talk to close out the show? But, you know, that's what you get for an NFL show. So hopefully Jack is back on Thursday. I'm thinking the QB rankings, it might be time. Could be time for that. So we'll be back on Thursday with that, and we'll see you then.